Okay, your base coat's down. Now immediately start mixing up your highlights. And remember, we have all of the amounts separated, so this should be easy. Just walk over, pour your part B into your part A, and start mixing. You can kind of see the benefit now of pre-measuring all the amounts you'll need. Makes the rest of the process really fast. And you can just mix this with a stir stick, scraping the edges and the bottom just like everything else. You can mix it with a drill as well, but in these small containers, a stir stick is just as easy. Mix it for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. All right, the highlight is pretty much mixed up. Now, for this particular marbled look, we like to drizzle out the highlight into the base coat. And you can see this is not hard. If you're 5 years old and older, you should be fairly good at this. You're just gonna drizzle it out all over the place. And then you'll notice that your helper is just swirling. He's not pushing onto the counter. Again, it's not a squeegee. He's just taking a roller, and I would use a fresh roller. I would not use a roller that you used on the highlights because it will start eating into that roller and getting chunks in the counter. So put a brand new roller on and just swirl back and forth or in a rounded motion. You can do circles, figure eights, whatever you want. You can also pour out small 4 to 6 inch puddles in random spots and then swirling into those puddles if you want more condensed spots of color on your counter. You can just get creative with it. This is the fun part. And we noticed that we needed a lot more. So we actually went back after all of this and added more. But right now I'm just taking that highlight and I'm drizzling it on that outer edge all the way down the face, and I'm just gonna let it drip. It's gonna help cover that top edge as well because we didn't router this counter. Just drizzle off the paint stick, on and off of the counter, on and off of the counter. And it's gonna drip onto the floor and onto the plastic, whatever you have plasticed off, that's fine. If you're not a messy person, you're gonna have issues with this part. All he's doing is swirling. And believe it or not, the next day, it'll look completely different than it does right now. And this is where I'm adding more highlights because we wanted to see it a little bit better. So if you think you'll need more color, just add more highlight. We had you separate enough highlight color out where you should have plenty of highlight colors to add into the base coat. We're just focusing on the countertop for now. You want to get that top looking the way you want it to look as quickly as possible, because the base coat has been down for a little bit now. And then we can just focus on the edges. And sometimes we've stayed as long as 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes just messing with the edges, making sure they look good. But the top, once it has the look you want, you really don't have to mess with it. The key to the edges is just constantly keeping the color on the edges. It's gonna wanna run, but you just keep applying color to the edges. And don't use the color from the top. Dip your roller either into piles on the ground that have dripped from the countertop, or use some of the extra color you have in your containers that's maybe starting to set up already, and just dab it on the face and roll it a little bit. That's all you're trying to do, is just get color on the faces. The faces will not look exactly like the top for obvious reasons. Notice he's pulling some of the color off the countertop. If you feel like it's still fluid enough, then you can do that. He's just dipping the roller into the piles that have dripped onto the plastic, and he's just reapplying it to the face. Always keeping color on that face. And eventually, if you do this about every 15 minutes while it's setting up, if you continue to dip your roller into the excess epoxy that has fallen on the floor like that, or in the bucket, if you dip it on the edges and continue to roll it, if you do that about every 15 minutes, eventually the epoxy will start setting up, ensuring that you'll have color on the edges. There's a time where the epoxy is very fluid, and then as time goes on, all of a sudden it'll kick and start setting up extremely fast. And the stuff that remains in the bucket, if you have any, you'll actually notice that that'll start smoking and steaming a bit. When it starts steaming, quit using it out of the bucket. And you probably ought to take that outside. I don't think you want to breathe that. It's going to continue to drip off those edges. that's fine, because even after about an hour, you can come along with a paint stick and just scrape the bottom of the counter to pull all the drips off. If you happen to go to bed and miss one, it's no big deal. You can cut it with a razor knife the next day, the drips.